Okay, so just to give you a bit of background on the study itself, we had 150 in-market consumers who completed the research throughout September and October on mobile devices. Tasks included finding a sports betting provider to suit their needs, then finding the range of in-play events, find specific odds, and place an accumulator on the bet slip. Now, we won't be going into the tasks today. What we'll be focusing on is the initial what we call the discover stage, which is where they conduct their research and how they're making decisions on choosing particular providers. So the sample are users who've placed a sports bet in the last 3 months and were a mixture of recruited from a mixture of third-party panel providers. Okay. So I'll go through the methodology at the end of the webinar, but to begin with, we have our discover phase, and this is where we're looking at where we ask our participants to go out and research sports betting providers. And at the end of that, we ask them to tell us who they would shortlist and why, and then who would they pick as a final preference and why. So if we look at the kind of leading brands around the discovery and preferences, so recall is where we have, before conducting any research, how many could recall this brand unprompted. So here we have in the green, it's highlighted who kind of leads that recall. So who's top of mind there? We can see Ladbrokes there at the top for that. And then initial preference, we asked them before conducting any research, what brand would they initially prefer? And here we can see William Hill in the lead there on 20%, and then followed fairly closely by Bet365 and Sky Bet. Then we move into shortlisting. So after researching options online, what brands would users put on a shortlist for further consideration? And we can see that Paddy Power and Ladbrokes come out the strongest here, with William Hill pretty close behind. I should probably point out that this study was conducted in the UK, if I haven't already said so. And then after shortlisting, we asked them which one brand would they choose as their exclusive provider. And here we can see William Hill coming out there at the top. So we'll have a look at kind of the movements, if you like, between that research journey when people go from the initial recall and preference to the final preference. And that could be based on, where they went during that research journey, or the fact that they're already an existing customer and they use them regularly. So we'll have a look also at what the differences are, the drivers, if you like, of that final preferences and shortlisting. So if we look at kind of the movement over the discovery process, we can see kind of from that brand recollection, William Hill, the ranking there down on the left-hand side, William Hill coming in first at both the start of the discovery process and at the end of the discovery process. So what we're looking for here from the shortlist to the final preference is, okay, so you made it onto the shortlist, then who did you choose as your final preference? And if we look at Ladbrokes there, we can see that while they were top of mind in terms of brand recollection, initial preference was lower. They score quite well on the shortlisting, but then as a final preferred provider, they drop in ranking. So that's basically people have a high awareness of them, they'd shortlist them, but they wouldn't necessarily choose them at final preference. And you can see there the kind of other movements between others, but William Hill really remaining the strongest there. Paddy Power moving from third, if you like, to second, so still maintaining there up at the top. So we don't see a lot of movement, I suppose, in between those brand recollection and the end of the journey, which is the final preference. Sky Bet, I suppose, moved from 6th into 4th. So again, as I said, there's a number of factors driving that, and we'll have a look at that. So who's losing the most prospects? So lost opportunity. So this is a score we measure, and this indicates the consumers who shortlisted a company but didn't select them at the preferred provider. And so that kind of gives us our lost opportunity score. So we can see here that William Hill have the lowest lost opportunity score. So what we're trying to do is, over our studies or over the work that we do, we're trying to reduce that lost opportunity score. So we're trying to identify reasons for that lost opportunity. And then from an experience side of view, we're trying to identify what changes you should make as a priority with regards to the user experience side that will help drive that lost opportunity. Obviously, there's other factors in play as well, and we bring those out as part of the analysis that we do around the discover journey. So here we can see kind of, not a lot of difference, I suppose, between William Hill, Sky Bet, and Bet365. They have the lowest lost opportunity. And then we go down to Betfred, who have the highest. And what that means is, of those that shortlisted Betfred, they lost the most at final preference. So that's basically what our lost opportunity score is telling us there. So if we just take a look, I've just profiled a couple of brands here. So we can see, okay, of those that shortlisted Bet365, who ended up choosing them, or who did they choose in the end if they didn't choose Bet365. So we can see here kind of Bet365 lose most of their preferences to Paddy Power. So of those who shortlisted them, more chose Paddy Power than chose anyone else. Then we have Bet365, or Sky Bet, I beg your pardon, on 23%, and William Hill at 21%. So they're the main providers that Bet365 is losing out to. And then after that, we can kind of see a fairly even split between all the other providers that they're losing out to. And we look at, what are those reasons for why those people are choosing Paddy Power over Bet365, for example. So next we look at Ladbrokes. So who are Ladbrokes losing to? So of those who shortlist Ladbrokes, whom do they then go on to choose? We can see that Ladbrokes lose 30% of those who shortlist them to William Hill, 22 to Paddy Power, 15 to Sky Bet, and 13 to Bet365. So again, the top three, I suppose, there, the top four in this case, are William Hill, Paddy Power, Sky Bet. So again, we look to identify, okay, so why are people choosing William Hill versus why are people choosing Ladbrokes at final preference, so that we can start to identify patterns of behavior, but also drivers around those final preferences, so we can start to identify where we want to focus our energies on. So I haven't done that. That was just an initial taster there for Bet365 and Ladbrokes. Obviously, that will work for all of their providers. And if you're in the study, then we look at, okay, so who are you losing to and why? So if we look at the kind of final preference drivers, we can see that familiarity, I've used them before, is the highest reason for people to choose a brand at final preference. So probably no real surprise there. The next factors are the ones that I've highlighted there are around the website experience. So the website is easy to understand and use. Their offers were easy to understand. Their web pages were fast to load. Their website was visually appealing. And they make it easy to withdraw your winnings. So I think a mixture there of brand factors, familiarity, and website experience, kind of all driving reasons to choose a brand at final preference. And if we look at kind of cutting that by specific brands and reasons for people choosing Sky Bet versus, in this instance, 888 and William Hill, we can see that for familiarity for Sky Bet is a big reason to choose them. So over 60% stating that this is a reason why they would choose Sky Bet, as opposed to, if we look at 888, a lot less people choose them because they've used them before. Now there's probably a brand awareness level there, but what we'd be looking to do is identify this and then say, okay, so what do you need to do to build your brand awareness? William Hill, while they're also a pretty well-known brand. Reason to use them for is the top reason to choose them, but as we can see, it's not as strong as Sky Bet in terms of reuse there. And then if we look at other reasons, like they give me plenty of options to choose from, we can see that Sky Bet and 888 are actually performing pretty well on there, but it's a less of a reason to choose William Hill. The website is easy to understand and use. Again, Sky Bet and 888 are far ahead there on William Hill in terms of why people are choosing them. And I've had a good experience with them before. We can see that Sky Bet, again, have a much more positive resonance with people who have used them before than, say, those who have used William Hill before or 888 before. So again, we're just looking to kind of see if we can identify patterns and themes of why people are choosing or where our weak areas are and what we need to focus on. So 888, we look at kind of the main reasons to choose 888 are they give me plenty of options to choose from, and the website is easy to understand and use. They also do well further down when their offers are easy to understand, and they provide a good online member services for my account. So we can see them doing much better there than, say, William Hill or Sky Bet as reasons to choose them. And William Hill, again, while not as strong, performing as strongly in terms of reasons to choose them as Sky Bet, their main reasons for choosing them at final preference are the fact that they are familiar with them, they've used them before. We can see kind of very even distribution, if you like, of reasons around the other top four reasons, which was their pages were fast to load, help me find betting options quickly, and they give me plenty of options to choose from. So pretty much all main reasons there, with no disparity between why people are rating those or why people are choosing those as reasons. So it just, this helps, gives us, I suppose, a really nice picture of where what drivers are performing strongly in and where we're potentially a little bit weaker or where maybe we're kind of a little bit static. So we can see that for William Hill, the variance around reasons to choose them isn't as extreme, if you like, as Sky Bet or 888. So if we look at kind of, is there an opportunity there, I suppose, during that research phase to interfere? And we know that, sports bettors are promiscuous. They have multiple sports betting accounts. And we know that, yes, they do change their minds. So we've got the percentage here of those who don't prefer their brand by the end of the research journey. So while they might say that this brand is their initial preference, for example, 44% of those who said that Bet365 was their initial preference didn't prefer this brand at the end. So Ladbrokes are the ones that lose, I suppose, the least there in terms of retaining those that initially preferred them, and then those who preferred them at the end. So Bet365 losing the most there, and William Hill losing quite a number as well. So having a website that is easy to understand and use is the second top driver for choosing a final preferred brand. If we look at, so what we do is we measure, not only at the end of each task, we measure the propensity to abandon, but what we also do is just measure the effort around completing the tasks, and just to see if we can start to identify where the risk of abandonment is, where the risk of, or where the positive retention is happening. For example, is it that the longer they spend on the site, the more we're retaining them? Or is it that we're just losing them? The longer they spend on the site, the more likely they are to abandon. Or is it that they're abandoning it at certain points in the journey? So if we look at just kind of the effort score here around kind of at the end of the study, and how much effort they felt the website made them put in to complete the tasks required, we can see that, for I suppose all of them except Ladbrokes, it was far more effort than they expected, with Sky Bet and Paddy Power having the highest score there at 11%. So that's the pink at the top. And then if we look at kind of the far less than expected, again, conversely, it's also people on Sky Bet and Paddy Power who thought they had the least effort. So a little bit of, I suppose, disparity there between those who are thinking it's far more effort and far less effort around the same brands. But also, if we look at kind of slightly more than expected, we've got Bet365. So this is around just matching users' expectations. I think what's interesting here is the middle ones around slightly less and about what I expected are pretty similar, apart from Coral there, who's on a lot less, around slightly less than they expected. So this is just a way of kind of measuring, temperature checking where people are thinking the effort required. And as this is such an important driver for final preference, this is something we're definitely interested in. So I suppose the point we're making here is that, we know that users have use multiple sites. We know they move between sites. So their mental model of how something works is carried through from one site to another. So while you might be trying to do something different or innovative, unless you're doing that in a way that's easier, intuitive, then, the risk there obviously is that you're just going to lose prospects. And if we look at kind of the mobile sales effectiveness scores, we can see that over the last number of years of the studies that we've done, that these scores have been slowly increasing. So what means is that, people are getting better at the experience that they're providing. So remaining static is not really an option. There's constant improvements to be made. Those scores are going up all the time. And we can see that, there's not much difference between that experience there at the top. So if we look at like Ladbrokes, Paddy Power there and Coral from an overall mobile sales effectiveness score, which would be more the consider stage of the fruition study that we now do, we can see that providers are getting better with their experience all the time. So that was kind of just a quick overview of the discover stage and what reasons people are choosing certain providers, what those overall final preference drivers are, and then why people are choosing one brand over another brand and where they're performing more strongly. So if we look at kind of the next stage, which is where we go into the consider and act. So this is where users are put onto the website and asked to conduct a number of tasks. And then from that, we roll up all the scores and then we get our overall consider score. So we can see here from the top level benchmark score, we've got Sky Bet there in the lead on 67. And then we look to break this down further. So if we look at kind of the next categories below that, we've got initial engagement, introducing options, facilitating decisions. So this is how are you helping people make a decision to bet or not to bet, or to sign up or not to sign up. Selecting a channel to apply. So is it solely online, or are there other ways that people can apply online? And how are you helping users do that? Adding a bet, and then, purchasing online or placing a bet online. So we can see kind of the leaders of each of those categories. So while we did see earlier that Sky Bet were kind of the overall leaders in terms of the experience, if we look kind of further down, we can see that we've got them leading in kind of almost all of those 5 out of the 6 categories. But selecting a challenge which apply, we've got everybody there on even scores, but Sky Bet really ahead when it comes to all the initial upfront and the backloading of those. So we're looking at kind of initial impressions here just for this webinar, this focus. So obviously, we only have so much time to focus on something here. So just looking at initial impressions. So when people go onto the website, what are you doing around, does it have what I need? Does it appear to meet my needs? What are you doing to encourage me to choose this brand? So what's your value proposition? What are you doing to build trust to help me select this brand? And what are you doing around the convenience of login? So we know login is really important, and having a quick and simple registration process is really important. So we can see that in terms of appears to meet needs and convenience of login, so the two sides, ends of there's not a massive difference between the brands there. We can see a little difference between Coral and Bet365. So they're the top and the bottom. They're the first two bars on the appears to meet needs. And some of that will be around measured in terms of an audit, a features and functions audit that we do, where it's a binary system of yes, no, do you do this, do you do that? And then we've got so that's the kind of what, and then we have the how. So we've got tasks, where we'd ask people about their initial impressions and give them certain criteria to score against. So appears to meet needs is one of those, but say, for example, value proposition and builds trust are audit, features and functions. So we can see from a value proposition point of view, Bet365 way below there, the top, which is Sky Bet and Coral. So they have features and functions that are Coral and Sky Bet have features and functions that are driving the value proposition, which Bet365 lack. Around the building trust, we have William Hill there. So what features and functions do they have that builds trust? And this is based on research that we would have conducted here at Global Reviews across multiple industries, across the UK, Ireland, Australia, who we also do studies in. And we would have identified kind of the features and functions that drive or that build trust. And then we can see in terms of features and functions around convenience of login, Ladbrokes there slightly ahead, but all the rest of them pretty much doing the same thing. So again, what this I suppose helps us identify is where stuff is, the industry is not doing anything new around it or not doing anything different to help drive that convenience of login, that everybody's pretty much performing on a par. And again, given that this is really important, is there better things that we can do? Is there features that people are using from other industries that we can learn from? So if we look at kind of impressions, bit of a heavy graph here, but what we're looking at around the initial preference and the feedback for the homepage, we can see that Sky Bet kind of does consistently well across the user feedback for the homepage. So they're in the dark green there. So what we're asking people to do is when we split the participants and put them onto each website, we're asking them to rate the homepage based on the criteria there down on the left hand side. So it displays all the information I expect to see. It gives the impression that can be trusted. The navigation menu is effective, offering clear pathways. It looks like a website that's easy to use. It looks like a site that caters for me if I was looking for a sports betting provider. It offers a clear starting point, has a visual design that's appealing, and it's uncluttered, allowing me to find information easy on the page. And if we think back to the drivers for the final preferences, we know that website experience is really important. After familiarity, the website that it looks like it's easy to use is the second most important driver for final preference. So I think it just reinforces the importance of that initial homepage and what you're showing people. So we can see Sky Bet doing pretty well there, and Bet365 actually do pretty well against a lot of the criteria as well. And we can see Coral are kind of further down in terms of what they're doing or what people think. So, why are Sky Bet kind of the scoring the highest? So for them, the homepage offers a clear starting point. So we can see that the offers are prominent and the carousel element is made clear. So multiple offers are promoted. We've got clear kind of navigation elements there. The side menu offers clear routes to sporting and help. The homepage focuses on football and horse racing and in play, so it's not trying to do everything for everybody. It's focusing on what they think is the most important or what's going to resonate. The promotional banner also at the footer, as well as links to kind of sponsorship. So, and then we've got the footer offering link to help and privacy details, so we know trust. They're kind of reinforcing that trust, even if it's just in a very subtle way. And then Ladbrokes score the highest for ease of login. So it offers the ability to remember the username and the password. And there's a link to PayPal registration. The error messages are helpful, and they give the user, knowledge on how many attempts they have and how to reset their password. It shows the link to the bet slip to encourage users to carry on and place that bet. So looking at kind of integrating the help into the login reduces that frustration and user loss. So what we want to be trying doing is making login as efficient and effective as possible. So we've got, kind of clear error messaging, how long, if there's live chat, if they're needing support, if they're having problems, the padlock kind of indicating that security. As we know, kind of being able to withdraw their money is key for them as well. So we want to make sure that we're kind of communicating to them that their information is safe and secure as well. And then we've got the option to auto log in, and then we've got Betway, who kind of offer a variety of contact options there around the login. So again, I suppose it's identifying those key drop-off points and then looking at what sort of features and functions are we supplying at that stage to help minimize or mitigate that drop-off. So Mr. Green have kind of this fly out help when you're in the login. So we can see that they offer a variety of channels in which to contextual channels when you're going to log in. And you can start your chat or call them. So again, it's just providing help in that context of an area where people might drop off. And then Betdaq make a point of signposting withdrawals. So if we look at kind of the drivers there at the top left, they make it easy to withdraw your winnings. While not top is still one of the higher up drivers for final preferences. So when users kind of scan the site, being able to see information around withdrawals add to their kind of sense of trust and their ease of use. 888 kind of places cashier link in the main side nav and then shows users how to deposit withdraw with a step-by-step guide. So again, just all these things kind of building that trust, building that confidence, and helping people to understand that this is a website that's easy to use. So we really just kind of did a really light touch on the type of work we do here at Global Reviews. And this is just an initial kind of a snippet of the study that we conducted. I'm just going to go through the methodology now before I can take any questions if people want. So I talked a lot about the discover and the consider. So here we have the discover stage, which is where we recruit in-market consumers. They're in their own home. They download a piece of software. We ask them to go out and explore their sports betting options on the web. And then after they've conducted research, they shortlist a number of brands and then select a final preference. And then we start to identify the reasons for that lost opportunity. So of those who shortlisted you, why didn't they choose you at final preference? And also we look at kind of what are those initial preference drivers and how those drivers change throughout that discover journey. Then after that, what we do is we split the participants, and they're allocated to a website they're not a customer of. So if you're in the study, you get 40, and then you can nominate competitors, and then we put 20 participants on there, and then they're taken through a series of tasks. And at the end of each of those tasks, we're getting voice of customer feedback, we're measuring efficiency, effectiveness, we're gathering any other additional questions that we want to ask them. And at the same time, in parallel, we're conducting a best practice features and functions audit. So this is the kind of the what, and then what we're doing then is measuring the propensity to abandon after each task. So that's the main methodology there, overview. So, we can see here that if we look at kind of the consumers, they're completing the tasks that reflect the customer research journey. Success, satisfaction, confidence is measured. We analyze how they're navigating through the site, so looking at click streams and heat maps, problems they experienced and why. We gather attitudinal questions about their preferences for researching, and then what is most important to consumers, and then do they like your site and the experience, and then some voice of customer, which is always really interesting. So then on the audit side, we have 400 criteria for the website. We have kind of features and functions that support the research journey. So what are you doing in each stage? And then what content is provided to help consumers choose your brand? So for example, does the website provide a call me back service? Does the form provide immediate error messaging? Things like that. And that is the end. So I'd like to thank you for your attendance today. I don't know if anyone has any questions. I'll just give you a minute to see if anyone has any questions, or if you want to follow up with any of our commercial directors. We have neil.white@globalreviews.com or matthew.armstrong@globalreviews.com. Be happy to take any of your questions. Okay, I don't think anyone has any questions, so I'm going to leave it there for today, folks. Thank you very much for attending. Hope you found that useful. And again, as I said, it's just a little snippet of what we talked about today. But if you'd like to know more, then contact Neil White or Matthew Armstrong at globalreviews.com. Thank you.